Hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Key Ideas to Improve Your Home and Office Delivery Business. My name is Kvamme. I'm a consultant here at Zenith, and with us today is Steve Keim, our principal consultant at Zenith Dashboard. Steve has over 30 years of experience in the HOD industry, helping to lead companies including Neverfail Spring Water of Australia, Sierra Spring Water Company, Primo Water, and Belmont Springs, to name a few. He's also served as president of the Australasian Bottled Water Association, board member of the IBWA, and chairman of the International Council of Bottled Water Associations. So before I turn things over to Steve, I just want to remind everyone that if you have any questions, we'll have a 10-minute Q&A following our 20-minute presentation. So please feel free to submit those through the Questions tab on the control panel. We'll also be making the presentation slides and recording available on our website. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Steve to get everything started.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Zenith webinar. I'm Steve Keim, and looking forward to chatting briefly with you. Zenith is a consulting company focused on global food and beverage industries, but it does a whole range of things in that context. It works on strategy, management, M&A, market research. A lot of market research and market research studies are available through them, technical production, water support, and environmental things as well, and also packaging and distribution. So basically you'll find that Zenith can be for the bottled water industry, can be a complete soup to nuts program for support. Specifically, I'm Steve Keim. We founded a section of the Zenith business called Dashboard. Dashboard is designed to be the home and office delivery segment of this consultancy firm, and that means it focuses not just on the home and office bottled water, but also works with POU and also office coffee service to some degree. But the important thing is, as the people I'm talking to know, the home and office delivery business is a totally different business than the bottled waters retail channels. And it requires a total different perspective on life and focus, and that's why this was created. Secondly, it's created in order to allow all of the companies, from the very large to the very small, get access to good information and use it to build their business productively. I am a senior consultant for Zenith working in this area, and I guess I'd say that my focus has been always to be able to be corporate, because I have a lot of corporate background, but at the same time be entrepreneurial, because I have worked in companies in the home and office delivery side with literally 2 or 3 people, all the way up to companies with hundreds and hundreds of people working on hundreds of different routes. So the trick is to be able to blend the corporate view with the entrepreneurial view and innovate, fix, and change. For perspective, my view from a financial standpoint is that people should be able to achieve EBITDA of at least 30% of revenue, if not more, in the HOD business. And I've done that successfully in a lot of different environments. It doesn't happen overnight, but systematically you can move to that kind of number and even get up into the high 30s. So that's kind of the objective that I would encourage you to look at. Zenith has produced a water cooler market report, and that report most recently shows some interesting information about the water cooler industry, or the home and office delivery cooler industry here in the United States. Number one, it talks about the total coolers, and the volume is up again in 2015 versus 2014. We're up to almost 7 million units, and that's a 5% growth year on year. Now, what's interesting, however, from my perspective, is that is, if you look at that, this is in the context of a large percentage of that goes to commercial, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And the other part is that 125 million homes in America, that means there's still a huge market on the home side for coolers. Number two, the filters are growing a bit faster. The point of use units are growing a bit faster than the HOD bottled water coolers, but they're both growing, and I think that's important. Another thing that's important to note, which is kind of hidden, but is Primo is the largest cooler manufacturer, I believe, in the world, but certainly in the U.S., and they're selling now coolers over the last 5 or 6 years in substantial quantities. For example, based on the evidence from their annual reports, they have produced over 2 million coolers. They've sold over 2 million coolers in the United States in the last 5 years. So there's this retail market component that's also growing. So what's happened is basically the HOD share has decreased as a percent of the total volume because the other components are growing faster. But the retail business is growing fast, the point of use business is growing fast, and the HOD volume is going up, but really only in 1 or 2% a year kind of numbers. Importantly, if you look at the outlets, the commercial side has been pretty steady at over 60% of the volume in the United States. I think that's actually a little distorted number because, again, you have the retail sales, and it's hard to determine who's buying the retail coolers. And my suspicion is that the retail sales are predominantly going to the residential customers, although to some degree, obviously, small businesses as well. But again, it shows that if you're trying to figure out is there any room for growth, the reality is there's huge room for growth. Oops. Now let's take a look at the environmental factors for 2017. If you're planning a business going forward, you've got to look at what you're going to focus on for your planning purposes. And one, I want you to think about the competitive market. I want you to think about pricing. Cost of fuel is a big issue these days, as always. And two other things that have come up, not suddenly, but certainly of importance these days: Food Safety Modernization Act and the Fair Labor Standards. So let's talk about those one at a time for a second. From a competitive standpoint, despite the pictures on the page that I just showed, the most important thing is that the local competition is what you're going to look at. And you should know the pricing that you're facing, and you should know the strengths and weaknesses of your local competitors. And that does require going out and making phone calls, or having your customer service people make phone calls and find out what the prices are, what the service levels are, what the package deals are. Because if you don't know what they're doing, you're operating blind, and that's really silly. It's hard to do in some ways, but at the end of the day, for very little effort, you can go find out, and you should. It's important also to know what the big guys are doing. And the big guys, because they often are in your market, and I'll spend just a brief moment. Culligan right now has been, if anything, slightly more focused on filtration, again, and I don't think it's going to be tremendously powerful competitor in most of your markets in the home and office delivery side. Primo I view as a positive factor in the industry, because while they're selling coolers and it's negative on the rental for the HOD business, the reality is they're really building the market. And if they continue to build the market, I think the HOD environment will continue to grow from that, because it's a benefit to have delivery. DS Services is probably, of Nestle and DS Services, the two large players in America. DS Services is probably the big one to watch, because When a company changes its name from DS Waters to DS Services, in this case, there's a reason for it. And I think they've got the message that service is what this business is all about. They're also getting into other services, admittedly, but I think they have really focused well on understanding what they need to do as a company. So I would keep my eyes on them a little bit, emulate them or compete fairly with them, but I would expect them to be increasingly players in the industry and not just the big guys who just sit there. I put COT in because COT bought DS Services this year, and that may or may not be relevant over time from a financial standpoint, providing DS Services with more opportunities. Let's look at pricing. With pricing, to me, I think that you should be raising your prices every year. I've done that as a matter of policy with most companies I've operated in. You lose essentially no one if you do it properly. And by properly, I mean announcing it and warning people of it, and doing it in 3-4% changes, not 8 and 10% changes. And what I would look at from your price standpoint, your full retail price, I would look at what the price is for Primo water in the stores, because that's the visible price. That's what people see. So how you compare to that is going to be much more relevant than how you compare to your other non-published competitors. So Primo is now in most markets selling at around $6.95. I would be inclined to think that pricing of $6.85 makes sense, or $7.49, somewhere in there. But you're either trying to be slightly less than the water you have to go pick up at the store, or you want to be more and admit that, in fact, you're providing an extra benefit, an extra service, and you're proud of your water. But I would focus on the Primo pricing. Now, on the cost of fuel forecasting, the current forecast that I've been reading from government agencies shows an uptick of somewhere in the neighborhood of 10% for gas and 15% for diesel in 2017. That's out of the U.S. Energy Information Agency. But it's reasonable in the sense that, given the U.S. growth in the oil market and their ability with fracking to generate more oil, it's not likely to go skyrocketing again, is I guess the key point. The Food Safety Modernization Act, I'm sure all of you are aware of it. Now is the time when we actually have to go from being aware of it to actually doing something about it, if you haven't done anything already. It's an act that focuses regulators from having a plan to respond to crisis to actually having a plan to prevent contamination. And that plan is fairly detailed. It requires lots of changes, physically and in terms of documentation. And that is a project that absolutely now must be done. I won't spend more time on it because it's way too complicated to do in this kind of session, but it should be highlighted as an important element. The Fair Labor Standards Act that came out this year, they've updated some of the requirements there, effective December 1 of this year. But basically, they have exempted white collars from the overtime, to exempt the white collar from overtime rules. They've changed the income requirements from $23,000 to $47,000, meaning that now your white collar employees have to be earning $47,500, I think it is, or more to be able to be exempt. So that means you are suddenly going to have a lot of people who are no longer exempt, even though they're not hourly, they're still on salaries. This is going to be something that you're going to have to watch for and deal with starting the end of this year, early next year. And I won't go into detail again, but that is something that is absolutely worth understanding and addressing. Now, the keys for success for 2017 from a business standpoint are density improvement, customer acquisition, margin improvement, and management leadership. To me, those are the key aspects. Excuse me, I'm going the wrong direction. Now, density improvement for me is always border management, M&A, and then lastly, targeting growth where you need to. Basically, density improvement is getting more bottles off a truck, getting more stops per day, more bottles per day off that truck, because at some point, if you don't have enough density, you're losing money on every run you make. When you get enough density, you're breaking even, and then when you get more density, you start making really good money. That's a simplistic way of understanding the HOD business. So in that context, what you really need to do is, number one, manage your borders. And by that I mean, do not allow customer service people or your route salespeople to slowly expand the size of your geography by another block here, another block there, so that that outer fringe of your geography is one always expanding and always losing money. You have to decide where the boundary is, make it formal, make it very clear that on this side of the street you deliver, on that side of the street you do not, period, done, no options. You can always make changes, but then you make it as a commitment to make an investment, not just a change to accommodate one customer. So that managing that border is huge in terms of improving profitability. It sounds small, it isn't. M&A is a great way to improve your profitability. That simply acquiring customers inside your own geography and putting them on your routes is the fastest, not necessarily the simplest, but certainly the fastest way to improve margins, improve density, and cash flow. And so I would always be looking at that. And then lastly, targeting growth where it's needed, and we can talk about that at length, but that's obviously something you need to be doing to be sure that you're continuing to have profitable routes. Customer acquisition and retention. There are two components to that. The acquisition part is a marketing plan, having a good marketing plan involving how you use your website effectively, TV, print, radio, trade shows, and salespeople. All of that is a critical area of discussion and planning for the year, because you need to know how much you're going to spend, when you're going to spend it, how you're going to do it to maximize the return on your investment. On the retention side, it's really providing good service. It's really providing good pricing to the quality customers you do have, managing your billing so that people don't end up owing thousands of dollars for water. When they see that, they quit. Get them early when they owe 30 days worth or 45 days. Don't let them go to 90 and 120. Out of water calls is a crisis. Manage your out of water calls. Be sure that that doesn't happen too often, because that's a clear indicator of bad service. And try to deliver the water on the delivery day you say you're going to deliver it. All of those things are components of customer acquisition and retention. Again, each one of those is a topic that we could talk for an hour on, but not today. Margin improvement. Probably the biggest area for margin improvement is and always will be the routes, because route expenses is the single biggest cost in your business. It's the delivery of the product. So how you manage your schedules, your work on rerouting and the routing direction process, that's where I would spend my time every year on margin improvement, because that's where the biggest bang for the buck is. Your rerouting, you can do it for efficiency, and you can also do it to create more room for growth, and you've got to be sure you balance those two out. On the production side, it's easy to look at margin improvements there as worth doing, but they're not as big, and the numbers won't be as big for you. And on purchasing, if you negotiate purchasing through volume and through a variety of different ways, purchasing can also help you improve your margins as well. This is all kind of leading into a discussion about cash flow management, which is really a financial component of your planning for next year and critical, but separate from the operational side of the business. And I wanted to not get into that at all today. But again, because of the nature of the cost of growth in this business, from a capital standpoint, coolers and bottles, you have to be careful with how you manage your cash flow. The last piece of success to me is what I call active management leadership. Because we're in a service business, that means that we have to be able to motivate people doing the service and the selling in our industry. We have to have them excited about what they're doing, believing in the product, believing in the company. And it's really hard to do that when somebody gets in a truck at 6 o'clock in the morning and leaves your site and is out of sight all day and comes home hopefully at 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, tired, has sold 180 or 200 bottles, and has talked to 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 customers. But that person is the one who's got to be really motivated 24/7. And so building your business so the customer service people and the route sales representatives and the quality control people, all of these people have to really have a complete dedication and conviction that their service to their customer, your customer, is what they're here for, what they live for. And that takes leadership. That is motivating and leadership. And again, a whole total area for discussion, but for your planning for next year, you should be spending money on it, you should be focusing on it, you should be committed to being sure they're trained and developed. There's no other way to describe that. Now, those are the components to me, the big components for your planning for next year. But I wanted to take a step back and say, look, there's several strategies you can use for 2017. One is what I define as the rapid growth strategy. And the rapid growth strategy is when your density is low, meaning basically, and I'm picking a number, but say 110 or 120 bottles per day per truck, average for the year or less, and you're probably then not making any money or losing money. You don't have time to just keep doing this stuff. You've got to grow the business rapidly. And so you have, if that's your situation, you've got to plan it and grow extremely rapidly, make the investment, and do what needs to be done to get over that hurdle so you can start making money in your business. The more common scenario is managing what I call managing your current business, but basically you've got enough density, you're in the 130, 150, 160 bottles per day per truck range, and you're making a little bit of money, and you want to continue to grow it. And so there you've got a different kind of business plan. The panic of urgency of I grow or die is not there, but you still want to be managing it for growth in a reasonable investment context. And then lastly, there's a maximized profit kind of strategy, which is, okay, I've got plenty of density, I'm doing well, the cash flow is good, but now I want my EBITDA to be as big as I can make it. And I want to do that either because I'm going to be selling it at a multiple of EBITDA, or because I'm kind of going into retirement mode and I just want a nice, solid, steady cash flow of reasonable size. I don't want this to be complicated and difficult. I just want it to be solid. So those are the three strategies, and within each one of those strategies, there's ways to get there. If you look at the rapid growth strategy, you need to improve your density by growing your customer base, and that's basically new products, new customers, and new types of services, new packages that you're offering, doing a lot of sales and marketing, working with customer retention, and by timetable I mean doing marketing to the right customers at the right time of year, because there are different times of year where customers are more receptive to signing up. You've got to, with geography, you want to be sure that you don't expand beyond whatever your target is, and you may even want to shrink it to improve your density. Make acquisitions inside your own geography, and look at you're going to be making investments in marketing. You're going to be making investments probably in production. You want to improve your route delivery efficiencies, and you're probably going to be looking at how to change the way your business works if you're losing money and you haven't got a handle on how to get the density. So those are the kinds of things you're going to be focused on if you're in a rapid growth environment where your basically density isn't high enough yet. In a managed business environment, you're looking probably to grow a net change of 2 to 5% per year. I mean, I personally like 5 to 7, 8%, but in that range, you want to be sure that your cash flow covers your growth, and you want to look at doing things like cost control. You want to refine your processes. You want to look at new technology, the website, database stuff, using handhelds, but using technology to improve efficiency. You want to do cost accounting analysis, because you may find that some products you're selling you aren't pricing right, or you're losing money on. M&A opportunities continue to always be something to talk about. But basically you're looking at a blend of steady growth and cost efficiencies and managing the business in that way. On the last piece, if you're maximizing your profits, you're, in other words, toward the looking at I want to sell a business, or I want to excuse me, or I want to kind of go into a stable mode. Now you want to, again, on geography, you want to probably shrink your outer geography, because even no matter how good you've been at that, the outer limits are probably still losing a little bit of money for you. So if you fire some of your most distant customers, or even better, sell them to your competitor out the other side of the world, then you can improve the profitability either a little bit or a lot, depending upon how unprofitable those are. Again, you can reroute now just to get maximum density, not to leave any room for growth. I would raise prices because basically the margin improvements will always help. Now your target for growth is you want to be flat, so you want to add about as many customers as you're losing every year. You want to eliminate anything unprofitable in services or in business, or things that are complicated or difficult. And you want to limit capital budget to essentials. And different people have a different point of view of what essential means, but you still have to keep the quality of your product up. You still have to keep the appearance of the route sales representative and his uniforms proper. The trucks have to look good, but you don't have to be making a lot of long-term investments. You can be cutting back on those kinds of things. So that would be the kind of the way I would think about a business in terms of maximizing your cash flow or profit. Now, that's kind of a really very brief, probably more than 20-minute summary of the key components to thinking about a business plan for next year. What it is you want to do is what I mean by a business plan. And how formal you do it depends on your personal practices. I have a strong point of view on more formal is better than less. But again, you've got to be thinking about the future. In terms of getting more help and more information on that line, obviously the Zenith Bottled Water Cooler Market Report is available through Zenith, and I would highly recommend that as a good view of what's going on in the industry today, and probably a lot of good ideas for where to take your business in that context. The dashboard provides a best practices program, which is basically regular news on everything from supplier products and regulations and management tips and things like that, to importantly a managing, mentoring, and advice component, which is basically, and I'm heavily involved in this, doing about 2 hours a month one-on-one with you or one of your managers to take your plan and talk about how you're implementing it on a day-to-day basis, and talk directly with your manager in terms of everything from HR and motivation to getting technical support and help, to marketing and your marketing plans and how to make them work. And basically it's a chance for someone who's running the business, it's lonely at the top, to talk to somebody who really truly, one, has been there, and number two, is kind of independent of the local politics and pressures of day-to-day operation. And that same thing, and I would do this, or someone else of my caliber would do this, would go through a quarterly planning review with each of you on the same session, excuse me, a different session, to look at your marketing plan, your business plan, and see how your performance is compared to that. And then talk about, okay, what do we do now, Coach, given that you're doing really well here and not so well there. And it's a really tremendous opportunity to keep on track throughout the course of a year, which builds to being on track over the course of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. So, in my opinion, it's a reasonably low-cost, good program to consider participating in. There's for more information how to get it.